Some moments arrive quietly, but they change a parent forever. That morning, Emma felt it the second she walked into the kitchen. Her son, Caleb, sat at the table with his fingers curled around a mug of warm tea. He did not usually drink tea, and he did not usually sit that still. He was always humming, tapping his foot, or flipping through a book. But that morning, he was silent. And when he lifted his eyes to hers, something in his expression stopped her breath. It was not sadness exactly. Not fear either. It was something heavier, something he was holding inside with both hands. Emma felt a soft ache bloom in her chest. She had been a mother for more than 16 years. She knew this look. It was the look of a boy trying to be strong while something in him quietly cracked. She stepped closer. "Morning, sweetheart," she said gently. Caleb nodded but did not smile. His eyes flicked toward the window, as if searching for words in the pale winter light. Emma's stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Caleb hesitated just for a breath, but it was enough. Enough for her to know that something had shifted between last night and this morning. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Emma placed her hand on the back of the chair beside him. She did not push. She did not insist. She knew that if she rushed him, he would retreat deeper into whatever storm he was standing in. So she waited. The kettle hummed quietly behind them. Birds rustled in the tree outside. The smell of cinnamon from the toast filled the small kitchen. Finally, Caleb drew in a slow breath. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk later? After school?" His voice wavered in a way Emma had not heard since he was a little boy. Her heart squeezed. "Of course we can," she whispered. "Whenever you're ready." He nodded again, relief flickering in his eyes, but it was faint, like a candle fighting the wind. He stood, grabbed his backpack, and paused at the doorway. For a moment, he looked at her with a quiet pleading she could not fully read. Then he left. Emma remained standing in the kitchen, her hand still on the chair, her heartbeat too loud in the quiet room. What was he carrying? Who had hurt him? Why did he suddenly seem so alone in his own thoughts? A long breath trembled out of her. She had always promised herself one thing, that Caleb would never face anything in this world without knowing she was on his side. No matter how complicated. No matter how confusing. No matter how heavy. But she also knew something else. Sometimes, loving your child meant giving them the space to bring their truth to you in their own time. Still, the worry clung to her like morning mist. She tried to focus on her work that day, but every quiet moment sent her mind drifting back to Caleb's eyes. To that flicker of something he almost said, and didn't. By late afternoon, she found herself standing at the kitchen window again, watching the street. The moment she saw him walking up the driveway, her breath caught. He looked tired. Not physically, but emotionally, like someone who had been wrestling with his thoughts all day. He stepped inside. Set down his backpack. Then looked up at her with an expression that made her chest ache all over again. "Mom," he said softly, "can we talk now?" Emma nodded and motioned for him to sit with her at the table. She sat across from him, hands folded, heart steady but ready for whatever truth he needed to let out. Caleb took a deep breath, opened his mouth, and hesitated, as if searching for enough courage to take the next step. The pause stretched. Emma leaned in gently, her voice warm and steady. "I'm right here, sweetheart," she whispered. "You don't have to carry anything alone." Caleb's eyes filled with something fragile, something he had tried so hard to hide. And just when he finally seemed ready to speak, a sudden knock sounded at the front door. Caleb stiffened instantly. His shoulders tensed. His eyes flicked toward the hallway with a flash of worry. Emma frowned softly. Who could possibly be arriving at a moment like this? She touched his hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "We'll talk right after I see who it is." But Caleb swallowed hard, and she could see fear flicker across his face. Whoever was at that door, Caleb clearly knew. And he clearly did not want them there. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Emma stood slowly, her heart tightening, and walked toward the front door, each step filled with rising unease. When she reached for the handle, Caleb whispered urgently behind her. "Mom, please, don't let them in." The words froze her in place. The knock came again, louder this time. Emma's hand hovered over the doorknob, and her heart whispered a question she wasn't ready to face. What exactly was her son afraid of? Emma's fingers paused on the doorknob. Behind her, Caleb stood frozen in the hallway, his face pale, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. That alone told her all she needed to know. Someone on the other side of that door was connected to whatever weight he had been carrying all day. The knock came again, firm but not aggressive. Still, it made Caleb flinch. Emma swallowed, steadied her breath, and lowered her hand. She walked back to her son instead. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "you don't want me to answer it?" Caleb shook his head quickly. "No. Please, not right now." There was fear in his voice, real fear, and it made her heart twist. Emma took his hand gently. "Okay," she murmured. "We won't open it." They stood there silently until the knocking stopped. Footsteps moved away. The porch creaked. Then, finally, quiet returned to the house. But the heaviness in the air remained. Emma led Caleb to the living room, where the soft evening light stretched across the carpet. They sat on the couch together, side by side, and for a moment neither spoke. Caleb's shoulders were tight. His breathing uneven. His eyes glued to his hands. Emma waited with the same patience she had practiced since he was small, back when he struggled to voice big feelings and needed time to gather courage. After a few long moments, Caleb finally whispered, "Mom, I didn't want them to see me here." Emma kept her voice calm. "Who was it?" He hesitated. His voice barely audible. "Evan." Emma felt a quiet jolt in her chest. Evan had been Caleb's closest friend for years. They had met when they were only 8 years old, biking through the neighborhood like tiny explorers. They had practically grown up in each other's backyards. But something had shifted between them in the past few months. Caleb had stopped inviting him over. Stopped mentioning him. Stopped smiling when his name came up. Emma had sensed something was wrong, but Caleb never opened up about it. She turned toward him gently. "Did something happen between you two?" Caleb blinked quickly, as if fighting the urge to retreat into silence. Then he nodded once. Emma didn't push. She only softened her voice. "Do you want to tell me?" Caleb's breath trembled, like emotion sat just behind it, waiting to spill. He looked down at his hands again. I think we stopped understanding each other." Emma listened, her heart steady. Caleb continued, his words slow and careful. "Evan gets frustrated with me now. He says I change plans too much. He says I get quiet for no reason. He says I should just act normal." Emma felt a protective warmth rise in her chest. Caleb's voice cracked slightly. "He told me last week that I make things difficult, without even trying." Emma's eyes softened with grief and love all at once. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. Caleb swallowed hard and shook his head. "There's nothing wrong with Evan. He's not mean. He's just tired of dealing with me, I guess." Emma placed her hand over his. "There is nothing wrong with you," she said, her voice full and sure. "Nothing." Caleb's lips pressed together tight, like he was holding back more than words. Emma leaned a little closer. "Did he say anything else?" A long moment passed before Caleb finally nodded. "He told me yesterday that maybe we shouldn't hang out anymore. That maybe I'm too complicated." The last word broke in half inside his mouth. Emma exhaled slowly, feeling her heart ache for him. "You're not complicated," she murmured. "You're thoughtful. And sensitive. And you feel things deeply. That's not a flaw, Caleb." He wiped his cheek quickly, embarrassed. Emma touched his shoulder gently. "It's okay to hurt," she whispered. "Losing someone you care about, even if they're still here, can feel like losing a piece of yourself." Caleb closed his eyes, as if her words hit something tender. He took another deep breath. "I didn't want to see him today," he said softly. "I didn't want him to see me upset. I didn't want him to think he was right about me." Emma could almost hear the unspoken truth beneath those words. "I'm scared he doesn't want me in his life anymore." Emma wrapped an arm around him, letting his head rest lightly against her shoulder. "I'm here," she whispered. "You don't have to hide anything from me." They sat together in the quiet living room, the soft ticking of the clock filling the space between them. After a few minutes, Caleb straightened again, wiping his face with the sleeve of his hoodie. "Mom, there's more," he said quietly. Emma turned toward him fully, her heart steadying again. He clasped his hands, his voice trembling. "Last week, I overheard something at school." He paused. "I heard Evan talking to some other guys." Emma braced herself gently. "What did he say?" Caleb swallowed, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "He said he didn't know how to deal with someone like me anymore." Emma's breath caught. She waited, giving him space. Caleb stared down at the floor, and one of the guys asked him what he meant. He hesitated, gathering the strength to finish. And Evan said, "You'll understand when you see him." The words hung in the air like a bruise. Emma felt something tighten painfully in her chest. Caleb looked up at her slowly, his eyes wet, his voice barely a breath. "Mom, what do people see when they look at me?" Before she could answer, before she could hold him again, the doorbell rang a second time. This time softer, almost hesitant. Caleb's eyes widened. "Mom, it's him again," he whispered. Emma stood slowly, her heart pounding with a new blend of worry and resolve. And as she walked toward the hallway, she wondered, was Evan here to apologize? Or to break her son a little more? Emma moved toward the front door slowly, each step careful, each breath steady. Behind her, Caleb hovered near the living room doorway, his shoulders tense, his eyes filled with worry he couldn't hide. The doorbell chimed again, soft, almost uncertain. Emma reached the door, placed her hand on the knob, and spoke without turning. "Caleb, do you want to go upstairs?" He shook his head. "No. I just don't want to talk to him." "Not yet." Emma nodded gently. "I'll handle it," she whispered. She opened the door just wide enough to step outside, then closed it behind her so Caleb wouldn't be exposed to whatever conversation was about to happen. Evan stood on the porch, hands stuffed awkwardly in the pockets of his jacket. His face was tight, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be there. "Hi, Mrs. Hart," he said quietly. Emma folded her arms across her chest, not hostile, but protective. "Evan," she said, "now isn't a good time." He shifted uncomfortably. I need to talk to Caleb." "He doesn't want to talk right now." Evan winced, as if the words struck deeper than he expected. "Is he okay?" he asked. Emma raised an eyebrow. "I think you know he's not." Evan looked down, his shoe scuffing the porch. He didn't argue. He didn't deny it. He didn't pretend ignorance. And that told her everything. After a long pause, he whispered, "I shouldn't have said those things." Emma didn't let her voice soften yet. "What exactly did you say, Evan?" He hesitated. Then, without excuse or deflection, he answered honestly. "I told him he was difficult to understand. And that sometimes, being his friend felt complicated." He closed his eyes, shame flickering across his face. "I shouldn't have said that. Not like that. Not to anyone, and definitely not about him." Emma inhaled slowly. Her instinct was to defend her son. To protect him. To shield him from anything that hurt him. But she also knew Evan. She had watched these boys share birthdays, school projects, scraped knees, and late-night video game tournaments. Evan wasn't cruel. He was a kid who didn't know how to hold someone else's depth the right way yet. Still, his words had cut Caleb deeply. And Emma wasn't going to ignore that. "Evan," she said gently but firmly, "Caleb is sensitive. He feels things deeply. That's part of who he is. It's not something he can turn on or off." "I know," Evan whispered. "Do you?" she asked quietly. He lifted his eyes slowly, eyes filled with regret. "I think I do now," he murmured. "He's been quieter at school lately, and I thought he was pulling away from me. I thought I was the one being left behind." Emma felt a shift, something honest, something raw. "So," she said carefully, instead of asking him what he was feeling, "you said things that made him feel worse." Evan nodded, his voice barely a breath. "Yes. And I'm sorry. Really sorry." Emma studied him for a long moment. She could see the guilt sitting heavily on his shoulders, but also a genuine desire to make things right. Still, she couldn't speak for Caleb. "I appreciate your apology," she said softly. "But Caleb needs time. He's hurting." Evan swallowed hard. "It's okay if he doesn't want to be friends with me anymore." Emma shook her head gently. "This isn't about giving up. It's about giving space. You hurt him. And now he needs a moment to breathe." A long silence settled on the porch. Finally, Evan nodded. "Can you tell him I stopped by?" he asked. "I will," Emma said. "But when he's ready." Evan stepped back, his shoulders low, his expression a mixture of worry and hope. "Thank you," he whispered before walking down the driveway. Emma waited until he turned the corner at the end of the street. Only then did she step back inside the house. Caleb was standing exactly where she left him, his eyes wide and uncertain. "What did he say?" he asked quietly. Emma closed the door, then crossed to him with soft steps. "He came to apologize," she said gently. "He knows he hurt you." Caleb looked down, his fingers tightening around the hem of his hoodie. "Did he mean it?" "Yes," Emma said simply. "He did." Caleb's breath shook. "I don't know if I'm ready to talk to him." "You don't have to," Emma said warmly. "Not until you feel safe. Not until you feel steady." Caleb nodded slowly. They walked back to the couch together, and Emma sat beside him, letting the silence settle comfortably this time. After a few quiet moments, Caleb whispered, "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think there's something wrong with me? I mean, maybe I am too much sometimes." Emma turned toward him fully and took his hands gently. "There is nothing wrong with you," she said. "You feel deeply. You notice things. You think before you speak. That's not too much. That's a gift." Caleb's eyes glistened, and he let out a shaky breath. Emma squeezed his hands softly. "But," she added, "I need you to tell me something. The truth, even if it feels hard." Caleb nodded, waiting. "When you said Evan would understand when he sees you, what did that mean?" Caleb hesitated, really hesitated, like the truth lived somewhere fragile, somewhere tender. And when he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "Mom, I think people at school have been talking about me." Emma felt her heartbeat pause. "Talking about you how?" she whispered. Caleb looked at her with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. "They think I'm different." Emma's breath caught. "What kind of different?" she asked softly, careful not to push too fast. Caleb swallowed. "I'm not sure yet," he whispered. "I just know they look at me like I'm something they're trying to figure out." Before Emma could respond, before she could pull him close again, Caleb added in a barely audible voice. "And maybe I'm trying to figure myself out too." Emma's heart stopped completely for one fragile second. Because she finally understood. This wasn't only about Evan. Caleb was carrying something much deeper. Something about who he was becoming. And how the world around him was beginning to react to it. And he wasn't sure how to say it aloud yet. For a long, quiet moment, Emma didn't move. Caleb's words lingered in the air between them, soft, unsure, trembling with something he was only beginning to understand inside himself. She didn't rush toward him. She didn't overwhelm him with questions. She simply breathed with him, letting the moment settle gently. When she finally spoke, her voice came out warm and steady. "You don't have to explain anything before you're ready," she whispered. Caleb nodded but didn't look up. He played with the sleeves of his hoodie, twisting the fabric nervously, like his hands needed something to hold while his heart tried to find its footing. Emma placed a soft hand on his arm. "What you're going through," she said, "it's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to not have every answer yet." Caleb swallowed hard. I feel different inside. And I don't know what it means." Emma's heart softened. "Different doesn't mean wrong," she said. He nodded again, but his shoulders were tight, like he was holding a heavy truth but didn't know where to place it. After a quiet moment, Emma asked gently, "Has someone at school said something to you?" Caleb hesitated. Then he whispered, "Some kids whisper when I walk past. They say I'm quiet. They say I think too much. They say I don't fit in the way they expect." Emma's expression softened with sympathy. That must hurt. It does, Caleb murmured. Sometimes I hear them trying to figure me out. Like I'm some kind of puzzle they're trying to solve. Emma's heart ached for him. And what about you? She asked softly. Are you trying to figure things out too? Caleb nodded slowly. Yes. I don't know if I'm like everyone else. I don't know if I think like they do. I don't know if I feel things the same way. His voice trembled. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing on the outside of everything. Emma slid closer and wrapped an arm around him. You're not on the outside, she whispered. Not with me. Caleb leaned into her, just slightly, as if allowing himself to rest for the first time that day. After a moment, he spoke again. I think Evan noticed it before I did, he said. Maybe that's why he didn't know how to talk to me anymore. Emma sighed softly. Sometimes people react to what they don't understand, she said. Sometimes they say the wrong things because they don't know how to handle something delicate. Caleb's jaw tightened. He made me feel strange. Like something about me is wrong. Emma touched his cheek gently, guiding his gaze toward her. There is nothing wrong with you, she said clearly. You are allowed to grow in your own way. You are allowed to understand yourself at your own pace. You are allowed to be exactly who you are becoming. Caleb blinked quickly, tears gathering at the edge of his lashes. But what if people don't accept it? He whispered. Emma's voice softened to a warm steadiness. Sweetheart, the right people will. And the people who don't, well, maybe they're not meant to walk every step of your journey with you. Caleb let out a shaky breath and nodded. A quiet moment passed before he spoke again. Mom, do you think Evan really wanted to apologize? Emma nodded gently. I think he came because he cares about you. He may not have understood your feelings, but he never wanted to hurt you. Caleb took that in slowly. He looked scared when I didn't come to the door, he murmured. Emma smiled softly. That's because losing someone you care about even a little is frightening. Caleb considered that, his fingers brushing the couch cushion. Do you think I should talk to him? Emma brushed his hair back gently. Only when you're ready, she said. Not because he asked. Not because I think you should. But because you decide the moment feels right. Caleb nodded thoughtfully. For the first time all day, his shoulders relaxed, just barely, but enough for Emma to see a small shift, like something in him had finally exhaled. They sat together in comfortable silence for several minutes. Until Caleb whispered, Mom? Yes, sweetheart. What if the things I'm figuring out about myself change the way people see me? Emma rested her hand over his heart. Then the world will adjust, she said gently. Because you are not changing into someone else. You are becoming more yourself. And that is always worth embracing. Caleb closed his eyes, letting her words settle deep inside him. After a moment, he looked up with a trembling but sincere question. Will you still understand me, even if I don't understand myself yet? Emma pulled him into a gentle hug. I will always understand you, she whispered. Even on the days you're still searching. Caleb clung to her for a brief moment, letting quiet emotion spill into her arms. When he sat back, his eyes were soft but uncertain. Mom, there's something I want to tell Evan someday. Something I wanted to tell him before everything got so confusing. Emma tilted her head gently. What is it? She asked. Caleb opened his mouth, tried to speak, but then hesitated, fear flickering across his expression. I'm not ready to say it yet, he whispered. Emma nodded with understanding. That's okay. You'll say it when it feels safe. Caleb sighed and leaned back against the couch, staring quietly at the ceiling. And just as Emma thought the evening was finally settling into calm, her phone buzzed on the table. She reached for it. A message. From Evan. 3 simple words that made Emma's breath catch. I need to explain. She felt her pulse quicken. And when she looked at Caleb, his eyes were already full of worry. What does he want to explain? Caleb whispered. Emma stared at the glowing screen, unsure of the answer. But one thing was certain. Whatever Evan wanted to say next, it was going to change something. Emma stared at the message glowing on her phone. I need to explain. 3 small words, but heavy enough to stir the quiet room. Caleb's eyes were wide, uncertain, searching her face for answers she didn't have. Emma set the phone down gently. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you don't have to read it. You don't have to respond to anything tonight." But Caleb shook his head. "I want to know," he whispered. "I just don't know if I'm ready to hear it from him directly." Emma nodded with understanding. "I can read it first," she offered. "Only if you want me to." Caleb hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay." She picked up the phone again, her fingers careful, as though even touching the message carried weight. She opened it. Evan's words came through in short lines, each one hesitant, as if he had rewritten them over and over. "Mrs. Hart. I didn't mean to hurt him. I didn't understand what he was going through. I thought he didn't want me around anymore. I was wrong. If he needs space, I'll give it to him. I just want him to know I care about him. I always have. Please tell him I'm sorry. Not because I feel guilty, but because he matters to me." Emma exhaled slowly. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the pain. But it was honest. She turned the screen toward Caleb. "Do you want me to read it aloud?" she asked softly, "or do you want to read it yourself?" Caleb took a slow breath. "I'll read it." She placed the phone gently in his hands. He read every line carefully. His eyes softened, then tightened, then softened again. When he finally lowered the phone, his voice was thin. "Mom, he really means it." Emma nodded, her voice warm and steady. "I think he does." Caleb stared at the message as if it held something fragile. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, in a quiet voice, he asked, "Why did he say I mattered to him?" Emma tilted her head gently. "Because you do," she said. "People don't get this worried unless someone is important to them." He swallowed hard. "Mom, there's something I should tell you." Emma's heart steadied. "Anything," she said softly. Caleb's fingers curled into the sleeves of his hoodie again, the gesture he always made when he was gathering courage. "I didn't just lose a friend," he whispered. "It felt like I was losing someone I cared about in a different way." Emma stayed very still. Caleb continued, voice trembling. "I don't know what that feeling means yet. I don't know how to describe it. And maybe it's too early to say anything. But when Evan started pulling away, it hurt more than losing a friendship should." Emma didn't rush in with explanations. She didn't label anything. She didn't tell him what to feel. She simply placed a gentle hand over his. "Your feelings are valid," she whispered. "Whatever they turn out to be." Caleb breathed out shakily. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not because of him. Just because I'm still trying to understand myself." Emma pulled him close, letting his head lean lightly against her shoulder, exactly like he used to when he was younger, back when the world felt too big and she was his safest place. "You have time," she murmured. "You don't have to rush into any answers. You don't have to define anything today. You just have to be honest with yourself, and gentle with yourself." Caleb nodded against her shoulder. After a quiet moment, he whispered, "Should I message him back?" Emma smiled softly. "That depends on what you feel right now." Caleb thought for a long time. Then he whispered, "I think I want to tell him that I need space, but I'm not shutting him out." Emma nodded. "That sounds fair. And kind." He typed slowly, choosing each word with care, his fingers trembling just a little. When he finished, he handed her the phone so she could see. His message was simple. "I'm not ready to talk yet. But I'm not angry anymore. I just need a little time. Thank you for reaching out." Emma felt a wave of warmth. "That's a very mature message," she said gently. "I'm proud of you." Caleb let out a quiet breath, something soft, something releasing. He pressed send. And for a moment, the room felt lighter. A soft silence settled between them, not heavy like before, but warm and steady. After a while, Caleb leaned back on the couch, his shoulders no longer pulled tight, his breathing more even. "Mom," he asked quietly. "Yes. Do you think things will be okay?" Emma smiled. "Maybe not immediately," she said honestly. "But eventually, yes. You're growing. He's learning. And your story isn't finished yet." Caleb nodded, letting her words sink deep into his heart. "And what about me?" he whispered. "The part of me I'm still figuring out." Emma touched his cheek gently. "You don't need to have every answer today," she said. "You're allowed to take your time. And whatever you discover about yourself, you won't be alone." Caleb's eyes softened. "Thank you for understanding me," he whispered. Emma wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a warm, steady hug. "Always," she murmured. "I'll walk every step of this with you." They stayed like that for a long moment, mother and son, held together by love deeper than words, stronger than fear. And as the evening settled into quiet calm, Caleb finally looked at her with the same expression he'd worn that morning, gentle, searching, hopeful. Only this time, he didn't look lost. He looked like someone who believed he wasn't broken. Someone who believed he had support. Someone who knew his heart would unfold in its own time. Emma smiled softly, because she knew the truth. Her son wasn't trying to hide from himself anymore. He was learning how to understand himself with courage, with patience, and with love. And she would be there for every step of it. Always.